So we are recording, everyone, just like we did last time, for especially all of the other students here in the community that could make it today. So essentially, my name is Taylor Ashley, and I'm actually serving here as an AmeriCorps Vista. It's kind of similar to the Peace Corps, but it's like the domestic version, essentially. So it's all community-based and like trying to kind of get more people out of that poverty cycle is like the overarching goal of it through a variety of ways. So I currently work at the Bodwell Center for Service and Volunteerism. That's my second year. I was able to extend for another year. And I do a lot of like youth coordinating in the community, while my partner is here studying wild blueberries and fungus that does attack them. So just in a nutshell, I feel like last week you were here. I did a terrible job, I feel like, not only introducing myself, but as well as the topic. So spend a quick second on that, kind of like what brought myself here and whatnot. And it all came back to like college, well, till birth. But as far as like a genuine interest in like kind of getting out, popping that little bubble that we have, that's created as we grow up, and realizing that there's like a world out there. There's a world outside your home, outside your school, outside your town. It's just like a bunch of bubbles. So, and I kind of like, it's overwhelming to like see these bubbles almost, but like that feeling to finally get out and like kind of shed a lot of those skin that we develop over time as a result of our environment, family, and different things. And it kind of like led to this crazy like adventures really on being in Spain and realizing that, wow, not only like just speaking English isn't like this superior language, or like, if you don't speak English, that doesn't put you below. That was my mindset. It was like crazy. My parents didn't promote that thought, but somehow developed it. And it was very insecure with my own like Spanish family that couldn't speak English and all these things. So all this happened like in one moment. And at that moment, it was just in my summer before starting university, but I started in the summer. And being in Spain, I realized like, wow, I really want to go live in a different place, study, do a study abroad, travel, explore my own roots, where's it going to take me? I don't know, and I really don't care, but there's this part of me that just needs to get out there and like experience and explore and meet the people all over the world that you couldn't meet unless you kind of go there. Like we could do virtual connecting and whatnot, but it's not the same. You have all the senses are heightened when you're in these new places, whether it is Boston or Portland, Maine, compared up to here, or over in Japan or Nairobi. So that's kind of just led, like, that was back in 2008, so it's been just over 10 years since then, and been able to travel to not every single inhabited continent. Australia is still one looking to go, but it's led to, doing the Peace Corps. My wife and I were in the Peace Corps out over, in Nicaragua. We've done some volunteer work in Cambodia, Ecuador. We got to grow oyster mushrooms on this like organic farm outside of Quito, and just kind of led to all these new places. Got to work in some hostels, ended up studying in Spain, kind of fulfilling that dream. And then after the Peace Corps, my wife and I were like, where do we go? And she really wanted to get a master's, so pretty much this was the place that we landed. And so since being here, was like, oh, I want to encourage. I'm at that point now where I just want others to, younger people to get out and do these types of experiences as well, and kind of forge their own path. So that kind of brought us to this international travel speaker series. So just really thank you all for coming here, coming back too, because I think just being here shows that you have this genuine interest, this curiosity that has brought you here, and hopefully it brings you even further out into fulfilling your dreams and whatnot. So with that being said, this is Naomi Kaywood. She's been like so like instrumental to this actually happening. Actually, she works here as a grad assistant and has worked in other countries. So with that being said, I'm going to pass this off. Naomi's going to take us through some of her experiences, but as well provide a lot of, feedback, a lot of not only feedback, but directions, things to think about, to be aware of. And then I also encourage you all to ask questions, to dig deep into her experiences too, because not every day as not only a traveler, but living abroad that people actually like ask those questions. So definitely has some good stories to tell that I'm curious to hear about too. So
yeah. So thanks, Taylor. So hi everyone. So my name is Naomi Kaywood. I am a graduate assistant here at the Career Center, and I'm also a second year in the School of Policy and International Affairs. So I'm graduating in May and going off into the world. And yeah, I have an extensive amount of international travel. You know, if we're talking about continents that we haven't been to, I've been to everyone except Antarctica and South America, and spent extensive time in a number of different places. A lot of my work has been in Southern Africa, in Zimbabwe and Zambia so far, and that's where I'll be headed back to when this chapter of my life ends and another one opens, I hope. And so I don't want to tell you too much extensively about myself just because there's a lot to go over. And I really want this presentation to be a little bit more about you and what you're interested in. And it's actually kind of nice that we're a smaller group because you guys can each chip in, how do you find a certain type of job, or, and, tell me a little bit more about what you're looking for, where we wouldn't be able to have that with a bigger group, which is kind of nice. But I'm always open to talk about my experiences, how I ended up where I was, and share personal anecdotes about it. So feel free to ask if you're curious about something and I haven't touched base on it. But before we get to the presentation real quick, why don't we just all introduce ourselves? Because we're not, I know some of us, but not everybody knows each other. So right here.
I'm Shania. I'm a major in English and a first year. I'm Abby. I'm a freshman and a major in human dimensions of climate change.
I'm Austin. I'm third year in biochemistry.
I'm Madison. I'm third year. I'm studying parks, recreation, and tourism.
I'm Betty. Officially, actually, first year, but actually second year because I'm graduating in May 2000 this year. I'm Spia, like her, same graduating in May.
Wonderful. So we have people with a lot of different interests, it seems, which is great. Because some people think when you're talking about working abroad that you really have to narrow it down to that you're an international affairs student and you're interested in going internationally. But the reality of it is there's so many different opportunities in tons of different avenues. And so this program is designed first to talk about the agenda. We're going to really talk about 3 different things. So general things to think about when it comes to not only deciding about going abroad, but how to go about it, what kind of experience you want. And then we'll touch base on the job search strategies. I'm sure that this is the thing where most people come and meet with me individually, how do you find these opportunities? And I've learned some tricks over the last couple of years here of just searching for opportunities for myself or searching for opportunities for my students. I love it when individual students make appointments with me and we come in and we look for opportunities together. So for anybody who is interested, until the end of the semester, I'm going to be the person, make an appointment with me. I'll help you find a good opportunity as best I can, or show you the tools. But I'm also going to be passing on that information to Lisa Carter, one of our career counselors. So you'll have that opportunity after I'm gone as well. So we'll touch base on those. I'll show you some resources. And then we're going to talk a little bit about just preparing for the experience and what to be thinking about before going to work or intern abroad as well. Does anybody seen this sign before? This is right down the road from my house. I work close to China, Maine, down near Palermo. But it's really funny because these are all towns actually in the state of Maine, but it makes it seem like you're about to travel all over the world. So I think it's a fun metaphor for, you can travel all over the world right from your own doorstep, sometimes in your own state, and there's always something to learn. So I just thought that was a fun picture to put there and see if anybody had any experience with it. So one of the first things I like to talk about when people are telling me they're interested in working abroad or interning abroad or even volunteering abroad, even though this presentation is about jobs and internships, it really covers a lot of volunteering abroad information as well. It's all pretty relevant. And a lot of the time internships abroad, depending on the type you're doing, might be unpaid. So they might be a combined internship volunteer experience too. So you can think about it that way. But there's some things that you want to think about. Are you comfortable learning another language or eating another food? I thought this picture was really funny when I saw it of this gentleman looking like he's eating an octopus or something, and he's just totally disgusted. But changing your lifestyle a little bit. So there's a difference between going to work a job in a different country and working a job in your own neighborhood. And it's not only the challenges that come with starting any new job, it's also the challenges that come with being immersed in a totally new culture, eating different things, living in a different lifestyle, meeting different people, having different languages around you. And it's really a question before you go down the road to, I want to work abroad, to make sure that you know with yourself. Because if the answer is, I'm not comfortable eating anything but peanut butter and jelly, that's okay. It just means that you want to make sure you go somewhere where that's available to you. It's the same thing with allergies. If you have a peanut allergy, you maybe don't want to go to Thailand. You know, there's things like that to think about. When you're thinking about the longer term things of working abroad, the questions like, do you have a family? Hey, welcome. Do you have a family or do you want to have a family? So some intern and job opportunities abroad might be really shorter time periods, but then other opportunities might be like, maybe you do want to go down that international affairs route and you want to be a diplomat and you are going to be, you know, working at an embassy in Saudi Arabia for 4 years. So they're all things, there's trade-offs. If you know that you need to be able to be home for Sunday brunch every week, it's also something. So it's just thinking about those things, thinking about how long you want to live in another country and what it really means for you. And the reason I talk about this is that I do see students who they haven't thought about those values beforehand, and they've gone down this whole realm, and all of a sudden they're ready, they're joining the foreign service and they're all on their way, and then they realize that it means that it's going to mean giving up a lot of things that they're not really ready to give up, and the last minute they have like a kind of breakdown and an identity crisis, and they have to rethink that opportunity. So it's a place to start, not a place to come back to, but at the same time, it shouldn't be something that like makes you feel like you can't work internationally or have some type of international minded work. Because even if you're like, you know, I have a child and I don't want to like be away from them for long periods of time, there are opportunities where you work for a company that has international roots and you talk to people on the phone and you maybe travel for a couple weeks at a time. So you're working in that international arena and have that experience, but you can have your family life too. It's just looking for the right opportunities. All right, is that going to the next one? Yeah, there we go. So the next thing in thinking about it is thinking about what your skills are. Because again, we have like a lot of different interests and different majors, it sounded like, in this room. And people get like tunnel vision, like you think working abroad is either you're a diplomat or you're doing humanitarian aid work, and that might not be right for you. You might not have those skills, or maybe you want to work in those industries, but they're looking for people who have marketing skills, writing skills, artistic skills, and all of these things as well. So before you ever even start looking for that opportunity, there's things to think about. So think about this even when you're planning for even jobs here on campus or whatnot, building a skills inventory, and whether it's a diagram like on this right-hand side, or you literally sit down and you write skills that I'm good at, skills that I need to work on, skills that I never want to do. Because also it's valid to say, I know I don't want to be on a computer. That isn't a skill. I don't want to be doing mathematical equations. That isn't a skill that I want. So you'll be able to narrow down what kinds of things you want to do based off of those conversations. And I just put a bunch of pictures of things on the slide that, you know, and people who are like, I'm an engineer. Like, I'm an engineer and I really want to go abroad. There are lots of opportunities in engineering abroad, but it maybe wouldn't be something you think about. There's Engineers Without Borders. There's working for small little nonprofits that are doing like water security, and they maybe aren't advertising them to the mainstream like engineering students. So you just have to look for those certain opportunities. But that doesn't mean they're not there. I've found through looking through different things, you would be shocked at how many different opportunities there are out there. It's just being able to do that deep internet searching where you find where they're posted, because it isn't that straightforward. And when we start to look at resources, you'll see. But also, what do you want to learn? So sometimes this is like, I don't know how to do research. I'm interested in doing education research, and I'm not quite sure how to do it, but I know that in the long run, I want to do it. So I'm going to give myself opportunities to say, you know, what transferable skills that I have to go on there, but I'm going to take an internship and push my comfort level a little bit to know that I'm going to gain these skills during that time period, and it will help direct my career path down that way. That's exactly a story from my own life. I went to Zambia with very little experience in education research, and I came out of it going, this is something that I want to do. So I'm going to go to my advisor and I'm going to take education research classes, and I'm going to learn how to do it so that next time I go back, I have these skills and I've developed them. That's kind of all of your process of figuring out what kinds of things you want to do. Oh my God, why does it keep going backwards? And so then it comes down to thinking creatively about your career path. So all of these ideas are kind of building you up. It's a little bit of career exploration before you actually go. Has anybody here been on our website before, the Career Center website? A couple of people. So I'm going to show you the resources in a minute, but we have some resources for career exploration. And I didn't want to take too much time out of this presentation to show you them thoroughly, but we will go there to look at them in a little bit. One of them is called What Can I Do with This Major? Excuse me. So that's a site where you can literally search by your major, and it gives you different areas that people with that background work in. And so it's actually a great tool for you to really think about, okay, what are the different things I can do if I'm an accountant, or if I'm in Parks and Rec, or if I'm in economics, or something along those lines. It also has some job search links on it that I'll show you in a minute. So utilizing those resources, Infobase is another great resource that we have on our website, and it's basically like job search, like it's a search engine for jobs, where you can type in anything. Like I had a student earlier and he was interested in comparative politics. So we typed comparative politics into it, and we saw what professional profiles came up that were associated with that, like political scientists or humanitarian aid workers or development professionals or things like that. And we were able to pull out that information and really read those professional profiles about what that job is. And often they lead to tips for entry and different things as well. So it's a great place to look, do some career exploration. And then Google. Like, it really seems like straightforward, but a lot of people don't utilize Google as well as they can. Googling different organizations and companies that you're interested in, and then reading about what the types of people who work there do is really a great way to learn more about those fields. Like, say you have like no experience internationally, but you met somebody who worked at Care International, go on to Care International's website, read who worked for that organization, what they did in their background. So this is going into my next one, but also utilize that, like Google, you type in humanitarian aid, what organizations come up, what can you learn from it? And then this is almost the biggest one, I think, for me, and it's who are your mentors and what do they do? So a large part of how we choose our career paths is our experiences, right? The people we meet, like we meet somebody along the road and we say, wow, that person is awesome. How can I be a little bit more like them? And I've given you 3 examples, and I know my little recording devices there, of people that I've met in my life who have directly influenced thoughts that I've had. Does anybody know who that first lady is? I know she's half covered, but so that's Maya Angelou. And she was an inspiration for me when I was younger. I went and saw her speak with my mother. And there are a lot of things about humanity I got from reading her books and knowing that I wanted to work kind of in a humanitarian realm, and I wanted to fight for women and children's rights. So that was like on a big scale. This is a famous person. So you can look at them. Who are they? What is their background? But then the second person, her name is Felicia. She was my supervisor at my internship in Zambia. She's one of the most hardworking people I have ever met. And I really instantly realized there was a lot I needed to learn from her. And so in my growing process, I've figured out ways of connecting myself to her in whatever way I can, and learning whatever I can from her. And then the last one, does anybody know Professor Bacchese?
Yeah.
So this is my advisor on my thesis project. So she's one of the professors here in political science. And I wanted to add her to the slide because, as most of us are always our students, our professors have a lot of influence over us. And it might not be the professor that you have in your major, like the professor that taught, like, History 101, if you're a history student or whatnot. But it could be a professor in one of the art classes you took, or in a business class you took, or something else, that one of your electives. But if you feel like you have a connection with that professor, ask them more about how they got to where they are today. If they're doing research that you are interested in, say, hey, can I meet with you real quick? Can you give me a little bit of advice of, like, I am a budding marketing. I'm very interested in marketing and I want to do it internationally. Can you give me any advice to how you got to where you are today? Some of those things can be more powerful than anything else you can do, like I personally think. So don't be afraid to ask people their stories, share a little bit about yourself with them, and then see what advice they can give you. Go online, read their bios. You can go to, say there's a company that you really like you're very interested in Google as a company, you want to know how the executive of Google got to where he is today. Go read his bio. I'm sure it's available somewhere online. All right. So then it comes down to, what are the steps to getting there? So as much as I think a lot of people, when it comes to working abroad, you get the idea and then you go, I want to go abroad and I need to do it right now. But the reality of it is there are tons and tons of opportunities out there, but you really want to set yourself up to be prepared to be successful in them. Internationally, myself, I've met a number of people who ended up in situations that they really shouldn't have been in and they weren't really prepared for, just because they were looking for something to do. And it was like, okay, I'm going to go volunteer here. Like one of the greatest examples I can give you is even myself when I was volunteered in rural Zimbabwe. I didn't do my research and know what I was doing, and I should have learned a little bit more about it. So the beginning steps I think are important, and it could be grad school, but it doesn't have to be. I like to say to students, like, just because I'm talking about grad school doesn't mean that grad school is right for you and that that's the only way. It is an avenue to get you a lot of different places. If you are interested in that international affairs world, or you're interested in doing research or teaching at a university or something along those lines, thinking about grad school and thinking about it a little earlier on can be helpful. Or you go out and you do a bunch of different experiences and then you come back to grad school, but it definitely is an avenue. Internships, I know this presentation is about jobs and internships. Often they're like one leads to another when it comes to international work. Very rarely are you going to apply for a job at an international company somewhere in one of their international offices and get in right away. Most of the time in a lot of different industries, it's you get an internship and then you get hired on as a staff member later on. So thinking about trying to work for someplace and doing some of these internships, learning to speak another language. This is a challenge for a lot of people, myself included, but it definitely is helpful in the world that we live in today because there's so much diversity going on and there's so many people who do speak other languages that having that powerful, like I have a second language, can help you get a job. If you do not, it isn't the end of the world. I speak English, I speak a little bit of French, and I speak a tiny, 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 tiny bit of Shinanja from being in Zambia. It works for me because of the region of the world I'm working in. If you want to work in South America, or you want to work in Europe, or you want to work in Asia, even though you can get by with some English, it really will benefit you to say, like, in the long run, you know that you want to work even in Northern Africa, learn French. You're not going to really be able to get into the industry without that. So that's some of that planning ahead on those games if you know the region you want to work in, figuring out the language to learn. And then volunteering abroad. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little bit. So volunteering abroad, I put the Peace Corps symbol in there because we are going to be talking about the Peace Corps next week, or the panel is going to be talking about the Peace Corps next week. But this is one of the biggest opportunities for going to volunteer abroad. And I like to mention it just because in case they don't mention it, it's something to be thinking on early if you think you want to go into the Peace Corps afterwards, because there is a process to make yourself a little bit more of a competitive candidate, because the Peace Corps is actually a competitive program now. I think some people think that the Peace Corps is just something that like you can easily just sign up for and go. But the reality of it is you have to apply for it like you're applying for a job. All of those different things of like building up your resume and having unique experiences to make you competitive, you know, work for the Peace Corps just like it would if you were applying to a job. But it's also a great opportunity to get like 2 solid years experience in a different place. And that can help you then get a job internationally afterwards. So if it's something you're interested about doing, it isn't the only avenue for volunteering. There are tons of other volunteer opportunities. And I'll talk about some of the good and the bad about that later on. Before I move on, I just wanted to pause to see, does anybody have any questions? Anything dying that they want to say about anything that I've talked about so far?
Are you going to mention about the international offices study abroad programs?
I do touch base on them a little bit later with their visas. What would you like to hear about?
I mean, nothing, just because I wrote a story on them for my GA-ships, so I got to know a lot. Like, anyways, I'm an international student, I have a lot of connection with them, but their study abroad, as you, like, I'm sure mentioned, that it's really good, and they help you a lot in finding like opportunities tailored to your what your interests are as well.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, the Office of International Programs is a great resource. It's a really great resource for international students who are looking for how do they get a job with their visa. But it also is a resource for you guys, and I talk about it a little bit later in your visa, for not only finding different opportunities, but also getting the right visa and making sure that you're doing the right thing. Study abroad is a great way of getting some of these experiences. We have a whole talk about study abroad, so I didn't really touch base about it during this program because I don't know that much about our study abroad program, but Erica Clements will be here the week after spring break talking about study abroad. And we're going to be in the Multicultural Center for that one, but if you're interested in that, definitely come to that.
Have you studied abroad by any chance?
Studied abroad.
You did?
Yeah, I was studying abroad.
I'm doing it now.
All right,
Yeah, you're studying abroad now. Do you want to tell us about your experience?
Yeah, I mean, so this is my third university abroad. So my first experience was in Britain, in the University of Leeds. So it was the first time I was leaving home and I was terrified. I mean, I thought I did my homework, but actually I didn't. I landed in England on a Sunday, and coming from India, it was like a weird experience because there was nobody outside. And I basically started crying because I couldn't say anything. So yeah, I mean, it's always going to be a culture shock, whatever you prepare for, and there's going to be reverse culture shock when you come back home. It's always that element. But studying abroad, I would say it's like if you don't do it, you miss out in life somehow. Because apart from like experiencing different education systems, you gain such a great wealth of cultural knowledge, which enriches you not only as a person, as a professional, but as a human being. So I think it's priceless. So you guys should definitely go for it.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I didn't have the opportunity to study abroad. It's something
You
that I
still
always-
can.
Well,
It's never, never.
I'm done in Maine now.
No, not in Maine. You go anywhere in the world, study abroad.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll do my PhD abroad. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, have you been able to, like, were any of your time in Zimbabwe or Zambia through your grad program here? Like, have you been able to go back?
Oh, through
Through
the
your
grad
grad school?
program?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my internship is a direct response from me being in this via program. And so, great point, Taylor, that you're connecting to, you can study something in grad school that ultimately helps you get a job abroad, but also there are a lot of grad programs that will support you working abroad. And we're gonna, actually, let me go to the next slide right now. And so here at the School of Policy and International Affairs, I came to the program knowing that I was interested in working internationally. I had just come from Zimbabwe, and I didn't necessarily know exactly what I wanted to study, but I knew it was something international. So that's how I ended up in the School of Policy and International Affairs. And I was surprised by how supportive they were at what you were interested in doing and helping you find that opportunity. And once I found my internship, SPIA was able, I wrote a proposal and they were able to help give me some funding and support me while I went to Zambia last summer. And have been a continuous contact. I've now been offered a position to go back to Zambia, so that might be on my agenda as a direct result of having that internship during my graduate school. So looking for those different opportunities. It depends on the program, of course, but grad school often has opportunities for not only interning abroad as part of your program. Most grad programs that have anything to do with international affairs will require you to do an internship, but also other programs often have research components where you can go abroad for research. The anthropology departments, like if you end up going to grad school for any type of anthropology field, like it's pretty much guaranteed that you're going to go abroad and do some research at some point, for the most part. Some people try to choose to do research domestically, but a huge percentage of people go abroad. But that's through, environmental studies, biology, like pretty much anything. Even if you're going to med school and studying to be a doctor, there usually are some type of opportunities to go and do something abroad as part of that experience. And so just to talk about grad school real quick, there are lots of different master's degrees and PhD degrees. There's also like Fulbright scholarships that we have some resources on. And do you remember Ned's last name?
Oh, Wheeler.
Wheeler.
It's like Bo Wheeler.
Yeah. So
I have a card here.
yeah, we have some resources on. There is actually a lady on campus who can help you prepare for these kind of opportunities. But Fulbright scholarships are basically scholarships that you can apply for that will help you go and study abroad to some degree, or do research abroad. I put in like a little, $1,000 thumbs up for the Maine School of Policy and International Affairs, just because you might not want to do your grad program here, but if you're interested in international affairs and you want to stay in Maine, it's a great program. It's a global policy program. But then there's the Peterson's guides. You can go on them online and search for grad programs, and you can search for all different types of grad programs, and you'd be surprised what there is out there that are like internationally based, whether they're international development programs or they're nutrition in a development context program or something like that. It's just doing your research. And so then what like degrees can you aim for? Basically, I put a handful of ones that I know people who work in these fields abroad, but really it's anything. Like whatever your degree program is, you just have to look for the right opportunity. I wouldn't say, oh, you're studying such and such, so you're never gonna have an opportunity abroad. It's just, you just have to look for the right opportunities. But you know, there are a lot of things to do. Environmental conservation is huge throughout the world, and there are a lot of opportunities there. Law, a lot of people who are interested in being able to go into government and go into the foreign service or things along those lines, having that law background can be really powerful. I put in marketing, but really, really like in marketing, accounting, business, you'd be surprised how many of these organizations are looking for somebody with a business background. Like you'll look at these huge nonprofits, Air International, Plan International, World Vision, and when you look at the jobs that they have available, a lot of the time they have to do with business, and they're looking for somebody to help them with marketing, to help them with finance planning, to help them with different things. And so if you're a business major, you have a lot of opportunities. Again, I talk about engineering and engineering without borders. Education is huge around the world, and being able to come with like some type of teaching background or some type of education background is great. Healthcare, obviously huge around the world, and there's a lot of different opportunities there as well. Okay, so this is like kind of getting to the juicy bits a little bit that a lot of people come here probably to hear. It's how do you find these opportunities? And I call them opportunities instead of jobs because they come in all different forms. You can be finding things where you go for a couple of months unpaid and volunteer. You could be going for a year unpaid and volunteer, and then they're calling it a job, but they cover your housing and transportation. That's more in like the development context. But there also are like full-time jobs, like international companies that are hiring people abroad, and you are going to move there and live there and work there, and that's going to be your life as well. So here's some things. We're going to leave my PowerPoint in a minute and actually go and look at them. But has everybody been on their career link? Raise your hand if you've been to your career link before. Okay. So you could put a couple other people. CareerLink is our job search platform here at the Career Center that we use. And there are some opportunities on there, like, you know, the JET program when they're looking for teaching English abroad will be on there and different things. But really, I like to use it as an avenue to going other places. So I will show you that in a minute. What can I do with this major? The resource I talked about before has links to outside sources. InfoBase links with Indeed, which is a job search platform, and you can find jobs that way. And Going Global is a big job search platform that we have a subscription to that's all about finding jobs in different countries. So we're going to go there. Idealist.org is better if you're looking for like small nonprofits and volunteer opportunities in small nonprofits. But it is like the idealist.org. It's the idea of companies that are really trying to do like either environmental conservation or humanitarian. That kind of save the world. I'm going to apologize because I'm losing my voice. I'm talking, and then searching by organization. So this is a large part of that like deep internet searching that I'm talking about. And LinkedIn can be great for this, where you look at a company that you're interested in and you go to their job board. And then you Google that company's name and you see what other companies Google suggests when you Google that company's name. And you basically look at individual organizations that you're interested in and see if they have any jobs, but then also see if you look at an organization on LinkedIn, it's going to tell you lists of other companies that people who looked at that organization also looked at. And so you can kind of like hand pick, like, I'm really interested in Human Health Watch. Let me go on and look at that, and then it connects me to the World Health Organization, which then connects me to this nonprofit that does healthcare in conflict zones or something along those lines. So you can look like that. I'm talking kind of in like that format of when you're looking at international affairs, because that's the world world that I'm in, but you can do this for whatever other interesting things you're in. If you're interested in tech, like you're interested in, you know, Google or what's the iPhone company's name?
Apple.
Apple. I was like just blanking on it. I was like, iPhone is not the name of the company. To tell how tech savvy I am. But yeah, if you're interested in Apple, like Google Apple, see if they have any other opportunities outside of the country, because some of these large companies have places like all over the world where they're looking for people to do, whether it's like local outreach or marketing or development or things along those lines. So it's a good way. And again, Google. I like to Google things. You haven't noticed. All right. So let me exit full screen. And I'm going to come over here. All right. Keep me logged in. All right. So this is what Career Link looks like. For those of you who have not been on your Career Link, you are registered. If you're a student here, you should be registered in Career Link. And the way that you get there is that on the front page of our career, let me just go there actually and show you. Give us a moment to do that. Where's the EDU? Really hard looking at this from this angle, so. All right, so this is what the Career Center page looks like. It's www.umaine.edu/career. You can also just Google University of Maine Career Center. There it will be. And so there's the Career Link login on the left-hand side of every one of our pages. And so as a student, you've already been registered. So what you need to do is you have to hit, well, first you can go through with your single sign-on, but it will bring you to another screen. Eventually you have to hit forgot password. So you can either do it here, you can do it on the second screen, but it's going to send you an email to your maine.edu email address. And that's where it will link you through to how to set up your own password to go into Career Link. I didn't go on and spend the time going through that process. If you want more information, come see me afterwards. We can get on a computer and do it together if you're confused by it. But either way, once you get into Career Link, it looks like this. We're not actually going to do a lot in Career Link because I think that you can just discover and search for yourself. There honestly aren't a huge amount of international opportunities on Career Link often. You know, most of the time they tend to be more, you know, local or national level jobs. However, every now and then something comes through, like internship opportunities with international companies or something. So it's worth looking. But really more what I wanted to show you is the shortcuts tab on the right-hand side. How many people have used any of these shortcuts? Okay, well, great. I'm teaching you something new at least. So when you look at the shortcuts tab, there's a number of different resources that you can click into. So this is where some of those resources that I was telling you about, what can I do with this major, is here. So what can I do with this major looks like this. If you go to it, it's going to have a button that says View All Majors. Once you get into what can I do with this major, you can go read. What do they say about your majors? Like say you're an accounting major, and I'm only doing this because this is the very first one. All right, okay. Shoot. I was away for too long. Clicked me out. All right. So I'm going to go back into my Career Link. So, there we go. So we have subscriptions to all of these websites. So the reason I'm showing you to go in through your Career Link to get to them and not just type in what can I do with this major is because you won't be able to get there. We paid for us to have access to this. So if you go in through the UMaine system, you'll be able to go right there. Okay, so you view all majors. The internet has been very slow today, so I apologize for that too. All right, so if you do all majors, say you go to a major that you're interested in. This isn't UMaine specific, so you sometimes have to look around. Like there's no international affairs, but there is global studies. But then that happens with a few different things. But it's gonna basically break it up into areas, employers, and strategies. You can explore this on your own. The real point of what I wanna show you on what can I do with this major is with every major, there's gonna be links to other outside sources. And a lot of these can be employment opportunities where you can find jobs specifically in that field. So that helps when you are looking for like, okay, you know, I'm an engineer. I'm sorry, I keep picking on you. But I'm an engineer and I want to learn about more engineering jobs. You'll find engineering job boards. Some of them might have international opportunities on there. The global studies one tends to link you to like the UN sites when you're looking for UN opportunities or nonprofit opportunities. You can get to idealist.org through these. So it's a place to start looking. And a lot of the time when you're looking for opportunities abroad, you really just need to look everywhere because they're not all posted in one place, unfortunately. There isn't like international jobs and this is where they all are. So you just want to use all your resources. Again, if you're looking, come and see me. I'll can sit there and go through all of this with you because I do it all the time. But here's a way for you to start looking on your own. This is the real site. Oh. Go back. So the real site that I want to show you today is called Going Global. So Going Global, you all have access to through your career link. And you click on that tab. Going Global is a great site in a number of different ways. One of the first things that Going Global does for you is it gives you career guides to different countries. So you click on career guides, career country guides. Here's all the countries that it has career guides on it. So say you're interested in going to Argentina, click on Argentina. Not all countries around here, it's only countries that they have access to the resources, but you can look around. If you're interested in going to work in Argentina, you can click on Argentina and look at all their resources about finding a job, hiring opportunities, getting a job there. They'll give you information about living there. This will be actually where they have information about you have a peanut allergy, you probably shouldn't come to Thailand. They might tell you this in the living information. So before you're ever thinking about going somewhere, read the country guide, see what information you can get. It's a great place where it's all organized into one spot for you. The other thing that is often interesting is it's going to give you advice about work permits and visas. And normally, the resume and CVs. So resumes and CVs aren't the same everywhere in the world. So if you're applying to an international company, you might want to know what that company's country CVs and resumes look like. This is where you can find the information. All right. So it's got these lovely country guides and different things. It also has global city guides. So say you're like, I want to go to Paris. That's where I'm interested in. You can click on this. And you can look at what, oh, there's Paris right there, okay. Let me read what they have as resources. Excuse me. Unfortunately, there aren't a whole lot of things in Africa here, so I think there is a Kenya guide, but I don't think there is one specifically for Nairobi, but you could go on and read the one for Kenya. As a whole, it also has this US city career guides too. So this could be like, maybe you're looking for specific jobs that are international companies, but are locally in one of our cities here. Because there are a lot of countries who work internationally that have offices in Boston, New York, Baltimore, all of them. So that's one way you can use it. You can use it just for information. Or, jobs. You can search jobs and you can search country specific. Say you're like, I really want to work in Argentina. You can search Argentina, see what comes up. I'm doing the quick search, and this is all of the jobs that came up with from Argentina. It was 9,384. But say you were interested in a teaching position, you could type in teaching. Let's see if anything comes up. All right, so that reduced it down to 13 jobs that had teaching involved. And obviously when you do any search, they're not always perfect, but it's a way to look. I will say on Going Global, a lot of them end up being company-based jobs. So it's harder to find some of those more humanitarian nonprofits on here. It's good for looking for jobs with bigger companies who are looking for interns and different things. Not that those small NGOs don't show up from time to time, but you won't find UN jobs or anything on here. It's best to go to the UN job site and stuff like that. But the other nice thing is there's also an internship tab. So say you're specifically looking for an internship, you can click on the internship tab and do the same process, but only looking for an internship. And so this could be a good way of starting that search process. All right, real quickly, this is what InfoBase looks like. It's also called the Ferguson's guide, so if you're confused by that. And basically you can type in, you know, like say you type in teacher, you know, you get all of this information about what different types of teacher professional profiles, where, you know, you click on a substitute teacher, it's going to give you all of these different positions and different things. You could read all of this and do some exploring on your own. Again, like I literally had a student who said, I want to design game boards. So we typed in game board designer and it came up and it gave him tips to entry on what you should be thinking about if you want to be a game board designer. So it's fun to play around with, but it also has the jobs and internships posting. So, you know, you can type in teacher. I can't actually see the screen, so if I misspell anything, just let me know. All right, and so obviously a whole bunch came up, over 10,000. You can then look for internships, but you can search by location. So sometimes their international companies do post on here. This is linked to Indeed. Has anybody used Indeed before? So it's like a pretty mainstream job search platform. The thing I like about it when you do it through InfoBase is that you can search for jobs and that are more specific. Like you can look for what is the professional profile name when you're typing it into that search, and then search for that specific. And I just find it an easier platform to work with than just straight Indeed. So it's a place to start looking for opportunities. And then the last one I want to show you real quick is called Idealist. And this is one of my favorite ones, but that's because I like to work with small nonprofits. So this is a great place to find good volunteer opportunities and to find jobs with nonprofits, internships with nonprofits. You can search by a number of things. So you can search by a location, but also I like these issue areas. So, you know, for me, because I do education research, like I might click education and youth or whatnot, but like say you're interested in climate change, I know at least one of us is, happy. But you know, you can click climate change as an interest, and all just companies who are interested in doing something to do with climate change will come up. So this is a great way for looking for those opportunities. I often say if you're looking for a volunteer opportunity abroad, to look for them on this site, because even though on this site you have to vet them as well, there are tons of different platforms for searching for international volunteer opportunities online. And a lot of them cost you a lot of money to do, or they haven't been vetted properly. So we're gonna get to it in a minute, but really like before you go down the avenue of looking at a bunch of different volunteer opportunities, try to stick to one platform that's been more of a trusted platform, because you can end up with somebody who's like in their basement and posting something as a volunteer opportunity, and you can go there and it not actually be a real thing. I will actually tell you a story about that, and that story, let's go back to my PowerPoint real quick. Does anybody have any questions about these different resources? All right, so do some exploration of them on your own. Come see me, I'll help you. We can make it like, I can make this list available to everybody if we get your email address and stuff like that, just so you know where you can look. But, okay. I'm gonna come back to my story later, because it's gonna be my slides later. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so then the other thing to be thinking about is building a network. So with a lot of things, but with going internationally specifically, sometimes it's really about who you know and who they know. So we have the Maine Mentor Program here, and that's, you can see that in those shortcuts on your career link. You have access to it as well. But that's like a network of people who are UMaine connected and are willing to talk to students about the jobs that they do. Not everybody in there like is working internationally, but some of them might have done the Peace Corps or had different experiences, so you can go in and read about their experiences and talk to them. Getting connected with alumni, any alumni who have worked internationally and you know they've worked for a certain company, is just like seeing what they do, and at least they can help you. Like I know how to do these things because I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to do them. And so I love it when I'm like, you want to go abroad? Let me teach you what I know. let me teach you how to find the right opportunity and how to go about it. And then LinkedIn is great for this. How many people here have a LinkedIn? So a few of us who it seems like older students, and maybe the younger students, which is totally okay. I didn't have a LinkedIn until last year. I'm way older than you. But the LinkedIn is a new thing that is really great for networking. And the thing I love about LinkedIn is not only can you use it for searching jobs, you can connect with other alumni, but you also, when you look at a company, if the settings, if the person that has their settings is open, you can see what UMaine alumni work at that company. So it could be that there's a company you're interested in working at, and there is a UMaine alum, and it says there's one UMaine alum who works here. The thing about reaching out to people in this kind of networking is you really have to do it tactfully, though. So don't just start seeing UMaine alumni that work at all these organizations you want to work for and start like sending them messages being like, can you get me a job? Nobody wants that. It puts way too much pressure on you, especially if you're not in a hiring managing position anyways, and you don't know that person. What you can do though, is you can reach out to that alumni and say, hey, you're working at this company, I'm really interested in it. Can you tell me a little bit more about your experience there? What's the office culture like? You can ask them a question that is within their realm of answering in a comfortable way, and it doesn't put them in an awkward situation. And it's a way of gaining that connection. You can't expect them to get a job for you, but it might be that like they can give you information that you wouldn't have otherwise, and you've at least like put a face and a name to that person who works at that company. So it's definitely valid. And then again, yeah, I said this already, but who do they know and who do you know and who do they know? So often it's like, I want to go to Zambia. So I know this person in my department who went to Zambia, so I'm going to connect her, who's going to connect her. So sometimes it's just using your resources, your professors, the other people in your program, alumni, all of those people are great. The other thing, I put this little picture of the computer all hooked up to the world, because we really are in this magical age where like I can send a text on my phone and it reaches my friend in Zimbabwe right now. So utilizing those resources and the fact that we can connect on such a level, I think is really powerful, and it leads to opportunities that you would not have access to otherwise. Resumes and cover letters. I just wanted to throw this in here real quick. We're not going to really talk about them, but for people, how many people here have written a resume before? All right, everyone. Okay, great. So it's not a brand new topic, at least. But yeah, this is going to be a really make it or break it. Unfortunately, there are so many people who are applying for positions that you really need a strong resume. We do this here at the Career Center all the time. We have walk-ins every day of the week. You can walk in with your resume. We'll sit down. We'll talk to you about it. Abby, I know, already has utilized the services, and maybe others. But I just wanted to leave you with 3 key things, and I have our guide to resume writing available for you to take one if you want one. You know, so, and also if you're interested, I don't know if you're interested more in a CV, but we have some CV opportunities.
Are you guys open during the spring break? Career Center? Oh, that's a good thing.
We are.
That's the only
And
time.
I'm going to be here a couple of days, but everybody's so come in. So do not use a template. This is important because there's 2 big things with templates. Often they don't format your resume the right way, but the other thing is a lot of the time you apply for things online now through some type of program, like you'll have like the fill in the dots and upload your resume. When you do that, a lot of the time your resume gets read by a computer software called an applicant tracking system. And when they read your resume, they're looking for keywords that connect it to the job profile or the job profile. So if they can't read your resume because it's in a template, because some templates show up as picture documents instead of Word documents, they think it's a blank page because it's not a real person, right? And so this isn't all templates. I don't know which templates it is though. So it's best to just stick away from them altogether. Customize to the individual position you're applying for. So putting the effort into really making sure if you're applying for a job, especially an international job, there's certain things that you want to have on your resume. Again, we can help you with that. A good thing that you can do is print out the job description, take a highlighter, highlight everything on that job description that you have experience in, and try to use the same words on your resume so that they connect. More. And then using strong action verbs to describe your experience. So this is just like the basic of like, instead of saying responsible for X, Y, and Z, anytime you can say that you designed something or you implemented something, created something, taught someone, and use that strong action verb, it's gonna make them read that line and get a little bit more out of it. But This is very hard and quick. Cover letters, same thing. Customize them to the job. There's all types of tricks. I have resources for you, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But does anybody have a question before I move on?
PDF. What if you save your resume as a PDF? Is that similar to what you're saying as well?
Similarly, yeah. Sometimes if you save your resume as a PDF, I've heard that some applicant tracking systems can't read it, and that it's better to do it as a Word document. However, if you're sending it to an individual person, like if you're emailing it to an individual person, some of these things aren't as valid, but I still think the templates often don't look good, don't utilize the space. But if you're sending to an individual person, I tend to send it as a PDF because then you know nobody's changing anything on it. But if you're sending it through one of the applicant tracking systems, I would set it with a Word document. Like, so if you're putting it in an online form, just to be sure that it gets through, because we know the Word documents work. And again, applicant tracking systems are changing all the time. I'm not an expert on them. You know, they could be evolving to this not being an issue anymore as I speak. One thing I do know that they're evolving towards is that now when you put your resume and cover letter through an applicant tracking system, some of them can go out into the internet, and anything that's connected to your voice or your phone number, your email address, or your name, they can pull that information so that it's there for the employer if they want to look at it. So that means Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, anything that you've ever registered using that, and the social media accounts really is what they're utilizing it for. So thinking about making sure your social media accounts are really professional, but also utilizing them to connect with people too. I didn't really touch base on that during networking, but you know, if you're really interested in a certain company, follow them on Facebook, follow them on Instagram, stay connected to what they're doing. Some places are, I know Impact Network, the organization I work with, posts on their social media when they have new positions open, and they might not post it anywhere else. So if you're not following them on social media, you'll never hear about it. So social media can work for or against you, but that's a whole nother conversation. All right. Oop, going backwards. All right, so this is just this part of, I like to just say, be thoughtful in your intentions when you're deciding to go abroad. So this is getting ready for you to apply. Do your research before you apply, before you accept a position, and before you go. And this is where I'm going to tell my story. And the reason that I say that is I went to Zimbabwe after I finished my undergraduate degree, 2016. And I did it as a volunteer on a job site that I found online, or a volunteer site I found online. And it had all these great pictures and, you know, these comments about how great this like orphanage that I was going to go volunteer in was in this whole setup. And I talked to the guy on the phone, and it sounded great. So I bought his ticket, and I went to Zimbabwe for 3 months. And it ended up being a great experience. However, when I got there, I found out that it wasn't a real organization. This organization that he was marketing, doing volunteerism in Zimbabwe at this orphanage, really actually he wasn't connected. He didn't work at this orphanage. He just kind of was using the orphanage as a way of getting people there. And he had no structure. So I kind of got there and I had to figure it all out. What am I going to do now? And I ended up doing this great sustainable agriculture project and jumping on it. But in the middle of it, I found out I didn't have the right visa, because I was there on this visiting visa, because he said, no, all you need is a visiting visa. And then I went to get my visa renewed, because you have to renew it every 30 days. And I almost got deported. So, you know, long story short, I ended up spending multiple days in immigration. I had to talk with a woman from the president's office, because Zimbabwe is not very friendly with Americans. They think that we're trying to like go in and CIA some information from them. I definitely wouldn't advise you go to Zimbabwe right now. They have a lot of political conflict going on. But this is all stuff I didn't do the research and really know about before I went. I just assumed that what this guy was telling me was right, and that I had the right visa. And I got there and it put me in some really sticky situations. And so when I got back, I had to go on all of those platforms that he had posted things on. And literally this was like this small African man who was like really struggling to make a living, but he thought if he could bring like rich Americans there and get them to give him money is what he was trying to do. It would help him, create a job for himself. And so there wasn't really ill intention on his part. It was just trying to figure out something. And he was going into an internet cafe and sitting on a computer and putting as many ads out there as he could. And it isn't a unique story. There are people who are doing that, and he didn't even know that I was there on the wrong visa. So I had to go on and had to like tell them that this wasn't a legitimate organization. You need to take them all off. And like a month later, I went and checked. He had just changed the organization's name and reposted. So other people were potentially, or even now, I don't know, in the same situation that I was in. So the best thing, you can't control what he does. What you can control is what you do. And that means talk to others who've had the same experience in that country. If they work for that company, if they cannot give you a reference of somebody who had a good experience there, don't do it. If they don't have a legitimate website where you can go and all of the links work, consider not doing it. And it's a bummer because situations like those volunteer opportunities, there could be a lot of great ones out there, but they just don't have the background to have that infrastructure of the websites, but you really need to protect yourself. Read online reviews and watch YouTube videos of what people have to say who have been there and really familiarize yourself with it. And then just learn as much about the country, cultural, social norms as you can. Because this is another mistake that I realized traveling abroad that other people have done, that they just don't know where they're going and they end up there. Like one of the men I met in Zimbabwe was from Australia, and he'd been in a motorcycle accident, and he had no idea what he was going into, thinking he was going to be in a rural village in Zimbabwe. And he had no business being there. He put himself into dangerous situations, and he put me into dangerous situations because he hadn't done the research to realize that with his handicap, it really wasn't a place he could be. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is. But it also is important that you don't offend anybody and that you kind of know what to expect. All right. There we go. I should have been using the whole time. Nope, no. Oh, right, there we go. My other be thoughtful slide, because I didn't want it to all be too much on this slide. So learn some of the local language. This is another thing that it's my personal preference, but it also is like a sticking point for me because I get out there in the world and there are people from America who they refuse to learn how to say hello in the local language or thank you in the local language. They just expect that other people know English, so why should they have to learn? And it is like it's just disrespectful in a lot of ways, and there are things that I feel you can bridge cultural barriers so much by putting in a little bit of effort. And even though languages are hard, like learn a little bit of the local language. It can help you out. It also makes you feel like a little bit more comfortable with the local people and different things. Familiarize yourself with the laws of the country and follow them. This is another thing that people are traveling abroad, all you know is what our laws that we have in this country. And so you go there and you act the same way you would here. And sometimes you're doing things that you really shouldn't be doing. I have another Zimbabwe story, and it's not me, but it was something I followed in the news. There was an American person in Zimbabwe who was there on an internship. She was 25 years old. She had her apartment. She got her apartment raided one day because she was writing a whole bunch of things on Facebook about President Mugabe, who was the president of Zimbabwe at the time, and who is not necessarily a nice person. My own opinion, thank God I'm not in Zimbabwe right now, but she was writing a bunch of things that she shouldn't have been, and they raided her apartment and they threw her in jail. And it totally fell out of the news. I never heard what happened to this woman, but I'm sure it was a huge diplomatic situation. But that just came from her thinking that she was as safe in that country as she was in this country and not understanding their local laws and the different things. So don't think just because the law doesn't make sense to you, you don't have to follow it. Best to not mess around.
I have a funny story like from US, like when I came from the first time in US. So a very normal thing, like, okay, so I have been in Britain and in India where we drive on the left side of the road, and here they drive at the right side of the road. I almost got killed just because I didn't realize I was not looking at the right side of the road when I was crossing the road or something. So it's simple things like that. You can just literally be road killed.
Yeah, no, great example. Yeah. Even when I get back from like Zambia, drives on the left-hand side of the road too. I was accidentally turning into the left-hand side and realizing I was driving on the wrong side of the road. So you have to retrain yourself and get comfortable, but it goes back to what you were saying earlier, that there's culture shock when you go somewhere, but there's also it coming back,
Yeah.
you know, and getting used to coming back to the United States. And we could talk about this topic. I love this topic of traveling abroad, working abroad, being in different cultures. I could talk about it for hours and hours. Come and see me if you want to. But yeah, and then I just had some fun pictures down here of different things that you could think of when you're traveling abroad. The funny thing I like to put up here is this is Sadza and Kapenta. These are tiny, tiny little fish. And that's what I ate when I was in Zimbabwe for 3 months. Pretty much only that and a vegetable called rape, which is extremely bitter. But yeah, so some things you have to get used to, things you have to think about. It wouldn't be a reason for me not to go back. All right, and real quickly about visas. I'm not an expert about visas. I don't know a whole lot about them, but there are some specific things that I can impart on you, and that is visas different country to country. Your visa is very country specific, and you have to do the research for that country. Like I didn't do. I didn't think I needed a work permit to volunteer and not get paid when I was in Zimbabwe. The reality of it is there are a lot of countries where you do have to actually get a work permit to volunteer there.
Yeah.
And you can get in trouble if you don't. And a lot of the volunteer opportunities, they aren't actually they can't get you the visa, which is it's this hard situation where the people are there, they need your help, but the government has a rule that you have to pay $200 or $500 is how much it costs in Zimbabwe to get a volunteer or a temporary work permit. And you have to have an organization that has the infrastructure to be able to get you that work permit. Unfortunately, it means if you can't get that work permit, you shouldn't go because you can end up in the situation that I ended up in. But yeah, they differ country to country. Make sure you do your research. The company that you're working for, so if you're actually getting a position like an internship or a job, they should know. Even volunteering, the people should know what visa you need. Make sure you do your own research and you trust them, but definitely talk about it with them and talk about it early on. Don't wait until a week before you are getting on a plane to go there to have that visa conversation of what visa do I need and how do I go about getting it. Ask advice from the Office of International Programs because they have way more experience with this than I do. They help students who are coming here who need work permits and visas and to understand what they're eligible for, but they also have ideas of if you're studying abroad and working abroad and what kinds of things you need to think about. There are a lot of countries that have these like work, they're like half work, half travel visas, which work, you know, like Australia has a great one, the UK has a great one, where you can go and work for like 3 months and travel for 3 months or whatever. But you really want to make sure that you're following your visa restrictions. So if you can only work for that amount of time, only work for that amount of time. If you can only travel for that amount of time, you know, follow all of the requirements. I've jumped one, but follow all the requirements that the visas give you and leave when you're supposed to. And then going to the country embassy. So one of the things, and this maybe isn't possible for you because, you know, if the country embassy is in Washington, D.C. and you're here in rural Maine, it might not be feasible. But if you can, by all means do and get that information from them in person. That was one thing when I was talking to the woman from the president's office in Zimbabwe. She looked at me, she was like, why didn't you go to the embassy? Why didn't you stop at the Zimbabwe embassy before you came here and know that you were on the right visa? Like, she was like, it's unacceptable that you didn't do that. But I was young and dumb, and now I know. And now I can impart that information on you. That's something, making sure that you're clear to go with the right visa.
So I have like applied for different country visas from Maine, and sometimes the international office helps, and sometimes they will say you have to apply on your own. So in that case, it's always a great idea to, like, if you have any doubt, just call them. Like, keep calling them like as many times as you need to get it fixed. I call them Canadian embassy like so many times. They probably knew my voice by then. But doesn't matter. You need to get it sorted. So you just call them.
Yeah.
They're the best source.
Yeah. So all things makes it a little bit more of a pain in the butt than you might want, but it's something that you have to do. Does anybody have any questions about visas or anything else that I can impart on you before I go to? So this is my time. Like, I always like to just end my presentations as like, what's one thing that you can do today? Because there's a lot of things that I talked about that, like, you're not going out and applying for jobs and applying for visas and doing your resume and doing it all at the same time. So thinking about what's one thing you can do for today, it's just a thought to leave you with as yourself as an individual, that, you know, maybe that thing is you take a language course, or maybe that thing is you say, well, I really want to go this summer. I need to start looking for jobs now, or I need to check my resume and see, or maybe I'm interested in it in 5 years from now. I just want to do some research and look at what's going on online. So, does anybody have any questions?
That's what I just wanted to add with networking.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned something. Have you all heard of the International Coffee Hour?
Booked for it last week.
Yeah, so every Friday, if you're available, every single Friday, fall semester, spring semester, at 4 p.m., like right there, actually, that's the North Pod, right
Out
there,
the
4
window,
p.m.
not on our lid.
Always a meal, like good meal. Sometimes not so good, but you can't win them all. But like, a lot of traditional meals. The goal of this International Coffee Hour is essentially like a social environment for a lot of our students that do come from abroad, but also a chance for like people like us from here to get the chance to meet these people, to welcome them, to share a meal together. And it's fun. A lot of times there is music. We'd love to have more music there, but sometimes there's not just here people there. And if you kind of like check it out, I know the Caribbean Club's doing Friday, they'll be Jamaican food that they're bringing from Portland.
Yeah.
But always good food. No, most of the time good food from all over the world. And that is a great place to go meet people from places around the world, You'll say, oh, I really want to go to Chile. And then you go there like, oh my gosh, you're from Chile. Like, what's life like there? Do you see a lot of Americans there, And then that's another way that you can kind of start that relationship. Yeah, even like the time I've spent in hostels traveling. When I did my exchange program, I stayed in a hostel, worked there, and met people from 54 different countries. And I actually had this little journal where I'd have them write in it and like draw a picture of their eyes closed and give recommendations on like foods to eat, music to listen, all kinds of things. And now I have this like record of all these amazing people that, next time we go to like Japan, I feel like I met so many Japanese people. We'll just go through this list and you have emails and like ways to contact them. You can even take a picture of their entry and then be like, hey, remember me? I'm coming to Japan. Like, do you have any recommendations? Or with jobs.
Yeah, it's a very good idea actually. Like, I'm going to Kenya and I'm contacting one of my friends from back England because they are like, those people and they are like your on-spot contact. If you're going in a difficult country, they are the best resources because you can trust them, unlike many other people you cannot. And also, like as you said, the International Coffee Hour is great because you can, like, if you're thinking of going to Argentina, you can ask an Argentinian what kind of culture, what kind of like job culture they have. Like, they're some of the best resources, and they're also educated grad or undergrad students. So I think they will understand your situation and the country's situation the best.
And I think, there's important points being brought up that there's so many different ways to meet people from all over the world doing interesting things. And you have to know who you are and know what the right situation is for you, but utilize those different opportunities. Here on campus, we have like the Multicultural Center. We have people from all over the world who are there. We take classes with people from all over the world. We have, different events going on, not Black History Month anymore, but it was Black History Month, and they had
Women's History.
No, it's Women's History Month. But yeah, they'll have all types of different events, and it tends to be that, like, at least in my experience, multicultural students get really involved. Like you see them all over campus.
Good idea.
I know for me, if you are just traveling in general, having just travel experience, like that's a great place to start. If you've never been abroad, figure out just going on a little trip. Not necessarily something big like I need to get a job abroad, but like just going and traveling somewhere, whether it's maybe you work on a farm, or you met somebody here at Maine from South Korea, and you're going to go visit them, or you and your family are going to go to Mexico, or figuring that out, because also that helps you become more eligible for the jobs down the line. The more multicultural experience, the more that you've been involved, the more times you've gotten on a plane and you've figured out going through immigration and dealing with all of those things, the easier it will be not only for you to get a job, but it will be easier for you when that time comes to go and you're doing something really big, like moving abroad for an extended period of time. So just exposing yourselves. Sometimes I know for me, I'm a little bit more of an introvert. And so I have a really hard time going to some of the events because of the fact that I'm scared of walking into a crowd of people. But that's something that I know about myself. Has it stopped me? I've traveled all over the world literally because of people I met. And I said, you live in New Zealand, I'm coming to visit for Christmas and gone to visit. And so it's, if you aren't the person who can, I'm sorry, but if you aren't the person who can like walk into a crowd full of people and start talking to everybody, that's okay. You can be the person who says, I sit next to somebody in class who's from India, and I want to talk to her all about India and hear all about it, and then maybe in a couple of years I'll go visit her because I know I made that connection and I was really interested in that.
You're welcome to visit.
Probably,
Yeah.
But we're getting close to the time. We still got about 10 minutes. If people have individual questions or you want to keep this as a great discussion, we can keep it going. We also have resources. And also, if you want to ever meet one-on-one, I love, like, again, I'm a little bit more of an introvert. I love meeting one-on-one with students and hearing exactly what they're interested in and showing them whatever opportunities they have. So you make an appointment here by either just coming up to the front desk and talking to career assistants, or you can call. You can reach out to me personally. My email is naomi.kwood@maine.edu. The only thing that's hard for me sometimes is I don't have control over my own schedule because they're putting appointments on my schedule. So sometimes I can't go on and say, oh, I know I have Tuesday at 10 available. And then it's a back and forth email chain because maybe you're not available during that time. So it's best to call the front desk because they know all of the places I'm available and you can just talk to them in person and they'll figure it out. But I can make all of these resources available too. This presentation has been recorded, so you can all have access to it if you want. Just make sure the sign-in has email on it.
Yeah, email there, and we'll at the end, even at the end of the series, like I was just thinking about that too. We have so many good resources that we're collecting from this series that yeah, I know some of you have already signed up, but just at the end, I was thinking we should definitely take the recordings and make that list of resources.
And we're still figuring out, this is a new system here at the Career Center where we have this like recording capability. We put in this new like media thing with the big screens and stuff just last year. So we're still figuring out how to make everything we record here available to students, but we're gonna figure that out. So keep in contact with the Career Center on that as well, and you can always just email me and I'll email you the video.
I got a question. So, like, and this is I feel like even last week, I didn't realize how many financial questions I had. What would you say, like, you know, there's a lot of us growing up, we hear and develop this belief, and a lot of it is valid, but, you know, traveling's expensive. Working abroad, like, how am I going to afford to work and live in, like, Zimbabwe if I don't have any money and I have just enough to get there? What?
Yeah.
Do you need to add to that?
So I have two trains of thoughts on it. The first is that if you are comfortable going out on an edge, before my first real big trip abroad, I was 20 years old and I had a ticket to go, don't do this, but I had a ticket to go for Christmas to England and I didn't take my return ticket home. So I spent 6 months just traveling around Europe, taking budget airlines and working in hostels and doing various things. It was very irresponsible and I ended up getting into a bunch of trouble at the UK immigration at one point and I was held for 8 hours and now I get held every time I try to go back. So I learned a valuable lesson there, and that's don't overstay your visa. You know, don't overstay your flight, have a return ticket home. But I spent less money on that trip than I would have on my rent for my apartment if I hadn't got rid of my apartment. And part of that is that I couch surfed and I worked in farms and I worked at hostels and I found friends that I could stay with where I would kind of like clean their house and stay with them for a month in southern France, things like that. However, it is always important that you have enough money to get yourself out. Because sometimes like if you only have the money to get there and an emergency happens, like sometimes you need to just buy a plane ticket or buy a hotel room or get yourself someplace safe and be smart about it. So even though like I'm a big proponent on it doesn't cost as much as they make it seem. These trips where you go to, like Zimbabwe has them where it's $5,000, come and work in an orphanage in Zimbabwe for a week. You never have to spend that much money. You do want to have enough money so that you can get yourself out of any situation that you get yourself into. And sometimes flights are the biggest part of that, the expense of that, but also it's maybe you're sick and you have to stay at a hotel because you've been having diarrhea for days and you can't go in the hole anymore. So you have to go to the city and get a hotel so that you can get proper medical care and you can stay there. So I guess this is a long-winded answer to your question. There are plenty of ways to travel on a budget, and a large part of that is meeting people, being willing to stay places that are a little off the beaten path, being willing to camp or live in little rural villages and not stay in the fancy hotels, or even some hostels are getting pretty expensive to stay in. You just want to make sure that you do it safely. And I would never promote, because I know my own capabilities of how to get myself out of rough situations, but I don't know yours. And some people like who haven't traveled before are going to end up in unsafe situations if they go and they don't have enough money. You know what I mean? For some travelers, getting that bus tour that takes them from place to place is the right option. It's the right option to spend that much money because you're safe the whole time. You don't have to plan from moment to moment, because that's stressful too. I spent 6 months doing it, and I will tell you, by the end, I was so stressed out by figuring out, where am I going next? Where am I going to sleep? How am I going to feed myself? How am I going to pay for the flight? That there are gives and takes. It's a great experience. I wouldn't go backwards, but really definitely know that you're prepared for the situation that you're going into. The best way I can answer that. I'm a big fan of woofing. I'm a big fan of working at hostels.
What's woofing?
Oh, what's woofing? Great question.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're right. I just am assuming everybody here has heard of woofing before, but woofing is, I've heard it in multiple ways, but I have always called it willing workers on organic farms. But it is a website where basically farmers put on information where they're looking for people to come and work for their farm, and basically usually you live there, you work for them, they feed you, and it's like a travel volunteer experience. And it's fairly vetted because so many people do it. There's these farms that have had woofers coming to work on them for decades now. So a lot of the time you have access. So whenever you're using those sites, again, see who has done it before. Yeah. Go on and say, okay, here's this farm. Like I worked on a farm in New Zealand when I was there for a couple of months. And you go on and you say, okay, these are all the people who have left comments on their page. I'm going to reach out to this one and say, hey, can you tell me about what your experience was? I did the same thing when I was couch surfing. Has anybody heard about the couchsurfing.org? Yeah, it's a website. A lot of people are freaked out about couch surfing. I think it's changed and isn't as good as it used to be. And I don't necessarily want to promote it, but it is an option where you meet people who are willing to have you stay at their house and show you the city for a couple of days or whatnot, and give you a place to stay. I love hosting people and would be happy to do it myself. The one thing that I always did is I looked at who had stayed with them before and their comments, and how many women were there, and I went to women who were traveling alone, and I wrote them specifically, and I started a conversation with them. Is this a safe place for me? How do they treat women? Because this was in 2008. I'm aging myself a little bit, but this was in 2008 that I was traveling, which isn't so long ago, but it is long ago, and I was young enough that I didn't necessarily feel safe. It wasn't a common thing for a single young woman to be traveling alone across Europe. And I was in places like Belgrade, Serbia, couch surfing with people that I maybe shouldn't have been couch surfing with at the time. But really, reach out to other people. They know what it was like. You can anybody can put comments on there, but if you can actually talk to a person who stayed with them and they can give you a real life example, that's going to be stronger than anything. But woofing is the same thing. I've woofed in a number of places. It's a great opportunity, especially I love working outside and I garden and I'm an avid farmer kind of person. If you're not, it might not be the right thing for you, but it is a great opportunity to get abroad and have your living expenses paid for and your food paid for and have a great experience.
And that term is work exchange. It's like that. I feel like that umbrella term now these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So another great way to extend your experience. And it's not like a professional job, but it's something that definitely gives you something to talk about in an interview and a hell of an experience.
You can put it on your resume, and again, your resume is all about just transferable skills. Yeah. There's tons of skills that you get even if you don't get paid for it. Yeah. And it's just how you write about it, which again, you have with the Career Center.
Yeah, you can use any experience kind of mold it and say what kind of skills you learn from it. Even if you're going on helping the university in research outreach, you can put it as your communication skill.
stuff like that. It always like make us feel.
All right.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yep. Thanks for having a great conversation, guys. And
Thank you.
hope it was helpful. Now you know how to turn the recorder off.